As far as we know, Becky will return, and everything we did throughout the second film was very intentional
for a third one,
for where we wanted to take the story and take Becky's character and continue an evolution.
I gotta say, I was a big fan of The Wrath of Becky. I love the first film, and I almost think this one blows the first out of the water in a way. It's bigger, it's bloodier, it's so much fun. Now, you of course weren't on the first film in the director's chair, so I'm curious. Was there any apprehension on both of your parts when you were approached to take over this world from a different pair of writers and directors?
That's a good question. We haven't gotten the apprehension angle, which I appreciate. I would say no, but it was important that the first thing we did was watch all sequels that we love and see what did they do, right? And then sequels that aren't so great, what did they do?
Wrong.
What did they do wrong? And, it was important. We wanted to bring a different tone to Becky, to The Wrath of Becky, whilst being, keeping things like the key, Diego, the dog's real name is Pac, Becky's overall, attitude. We heightened it a little bit, but I don't think there was apprehension. It was just like, okay, we better not fuck this up. Yeah, so let's do our research.
We embraced the challenge of doing what we could to hopefully satisfy the fans of the first film, whilst simultaneously bringing in a new audience and creating a film that stands on its own two legs. Two feet. That was very important to us. We wanted to invite a new audience into a world that we love, being the world of Becky, and to meet that character. So yeah, I think respectfully, no, there wasn't hesitation or apprehension. We were excited for the challenge.
Well, you certainly stepped up to the challenge. It again, like I said before, it really does rival the first in every way. One of the things that I love too in the way that it connects the films is that comic book style opening credit sequence explaining where she's been the past few years. And I'm curious where the idea for that came about and how you went about putting that together.
Another question we haven't gotten. You're just killing it, Grant.
So that came about. There's a couple layers here. The first being, when you watch the first Becky, the opening, it's not an opening title sequence, but it's the opening title card leans into the colored pencil element, right? Everything we did in this one, we wanted to evolve. We wanted to evolve Becky as a character. It's been 3 years since we've seen her, 2 years in the story. We wanted to evolve the visual tone of the film and the camera, so the cinematography. We wanted to make sure we had a sleeker look to things and stay away from handheld unless it felt like the really appropriate moments. And we wanted to, when we had the idea of, we're leaning into like a comic book tone, right? We're very inspired with this film with Kick-Ass and Edgar Wright films and Tarantino films and Guy Ritchie films. Those were our big inspirations when we were writing this and trying to approach it visually. So we were like, let's do an opening credit sequence and let's lean into an evolved version of what they did in the first one, which was like flashy colored pencils art. We were like, so what's this one? It's like storyboards. And the idea of what those storyboards became in terms of telling a 2-year story of Becky's journey between the first and second movie was actually Suzanne's idea. We were driving one day during a location scout, and we just had this idea. We're really toying with like, what is our cut into a title sequence, and what is that title sequence, and do we have enough to really earn and justify an opening credit sequence that's going to keep an audience engaged for 2 minutes? And she had this idea of like, wait a minute, we have a period of time. What if we're telling a story? Because it's also a visual way to give information as opposed to just dialogue, which we try and stay away from, right? Show, don't tell.
Yeah, and we have an amazing artist, Micah Brenner, who just, we'd say, this is the scenario. We want Becky stealing dog food from a pet store. Done.
Yeah, he was just phenomenal. So that was kind of the journey there with that sequence.
I love that you mentioned Kick-Ass, because the second you said comic book tone, my mind went to Mark Millar and all of his works. So I was like, oh, that's perfect tone for this. Yeah, perfect for this kind of story. Now we get Lulu back, but then we get her now pitted against Seann William Scott. And I mean, much like Kevin in the first film, he just blows us all away with how like menacing he is. And I enjoy his work even outside of comedy, what with Bloodline and Lethal Weapon and such. So this isn't the first time I've seen him in this, but it is the first time a lot of audiences are seeing him this way. What was it like finding the perfect person to play Daryl Jr. and really, you know, be this menacing figure to play against Becky?
Yeah, we had a short list of names, you know, as when you go through the casting process. And when it comes to a star, you're like, God, I hope they say yes. And when we saw his name on the short list from their casting directors, we were like, this is interesting.
It was there was a moment of like, ooh, that could be very.
And like, I hadn't seen Lethal Weapon. You know, once we started working with him, I started watching Goon and like, you know, stuff like that. But it was more literally, it makes me sound like a genius because he's so good, but I'm not. And also all it was like, oh, I call it a director's spidey sense, where we're like, there's going to be something here. And then we talked to him and before he signed on, and he had such amazing ideas for the character to really ground him and
give him this military backstory.
Yeah, this military background. And we were like, oh,
visually what amazing. He would wear, how clean cut he wanted to present himself, because he used to be in the military and he'd make his bed every morning. And, you know, like that strict kind of lifestyle he lived. He would live in a nicer house, not, you know, we didn't want to lean into this kind of cliche,
like beer signs on the wall, you know,
he came to the table with such incredible ideas and elevated what was on the page to a whole nother level. He had scene ideas, he had dialogue pitches, he had things like that. And as directors who love to collaborate with our different departments, you know, Sidney Lumet says actors are the heads of their department. And it's very true. And a lot of people don't think about that with actors. And so to have an actor who, like any other head of a department, is coming to you with ideas in terms of how they want to present their art form, it was like, yes.
It was a dream.
Like, it was
like,
a dream.
Even down to darkening his beard. Because, you know, he's pretty blonde. And we were like, that's so great.
Having a beard.
I mean. So, yeah, he was, and he's so like soft spoken, which to me is so much creepier than someone yelling at you.
Yeah, you know? we were very much fans of the intellectual, calculated, quiet threat to this character, as opposed to what could have been larger and a little too caricaturish, you know?
Yeah, he really does find that right level of, you know, being just menacing enough, but still quiet enough that you're just enthralled by him. And that monologue in particular, it was really quite just the powerful sequence to watch. What was it like collaborating with him, you know, on the day as well as before, to really get in the mood for that sequence?
I'm really glad you're asking that.
Yeah,
it was,
man, you're good at your job.
Well, it's such a lovely feeling, because I feel like
that we put a lot of time into
like
that.
You get the things that we really work hard on. So in our first meeting with Seann William Scott, what was there was probably like a third of a page monologue. And he said, given the backstory I'm pitching, what if it's this story he tells that starts one way and ultimately leads to this incredible threat he's making while simultaneously exposing just how dangerous he is. And we were like, oh my God, that's brilliant. And it was such a like half-assed version of that. And I'm dissing myself there in the original pages in the first draft. And so when he came to us with the backstory for the character and then pitched that we really like build upon this moment, we were so giddy about it. I went off and I wrote this like 2-page monologue, and we sent it to him, and he was like, fuck yes. Like he was so excited about it. I think that's the moment he really just like went to a whole different level of investment. Not that he wasn't from the first meeting, but like we joke with him, like, was that a test? Like, were you waiting to see if we could pull that off and do what you wanted there before you officially said yes? And from that moment on, it really felt like we had done our job of defining who this guy is. And he showed up on his first day on set, and that was his first scene. And to get to be in that scene with him was also just such a pleasure, because it was so fun to be the person sitting opposite him in that moment and to try and stay in the moment as a character while simultaneously being like in director's head, like, this is so fucking great.
Yeah. And a little funny story, the whiskey he's drinking is obviously apple juice, and someone knocked it over onto his pants. And he's like, the nicest guy ever. He's like, these pants are so dry wick. Like, don't worry about it, guys. Meanwhile, Lulu's under the couch, like drenched in apple juice.
And we all forgot
she was under there, and she was like, the fuck, guys? Like, I'm here.
Covered in sticky apple juice. And everyone was like,
but Sean, just kidding. No.
No, that was a lot of work went into that moment. And so we're happy it turned out the way it did.
I'm glad that you were just as invested in it as I was watching it. Yeah, it's an incredible sequence. Now, as much as I love those quieter sequences in this film, I also love the action that this film delivers. And I love how practical it all feels as well. Obviously, on a smaller budget film like this, you want to stay practical over CGI. But I'm curious, some of the bigger effects, even like the head explosion, was crazy to watch. What was it like, getting down and gritty with all of this action?
Well, we had the best special effects guys, and
Brian Spears
was our makeup artist. I mean, he does, like, you look him up, he's just like does everything.
It's like all the Marvel shows in New York.
Because he loves blood and guts, he comes with his like kit of just shit,
just bodies
that like, and no one's made any, like, is making any money on this movie. And it's just, we all just want to blow some shit up and see guts everywhere. And
kind of like figuring out, okay, he's bringing everything he's got in like his house. You should see this.
Yeah, because we can't afford for a new mold of a head, so he's bringing an old head.
And we're just like, piecing things together. It was like the doll in Toy Story. You're just like building Sid's creature.
Yeah.
And then figuring out how you can pull off the things that you have on the page. It was stressful as hell, because you're doing this low budget, very ambitious movie and trying to make these kills, which are what the audience, especially the fans of the first one, are like coming for. And it was also a blast. Yeah. I mean, the moment that Twig is killed, our jaws were on the ground. We never would have imagined Lulu would have gone to the length she went to in that moment. Watching these people off camera, just splashing her with blood and watching her go to that place. I mean, it was just...
And also, we don't have time. I say this often. It was like shooting a play, because we don't have time, especially with blood, we got to do a second take, but Lulu has to go get all that blood off of her so we can do it again. We had one option for that scene.
Yeah.
And like, so
everyone has to bring their
A game. We have to hope that the blood sprays like in the right way, which is like crazy. And you can always count on Lulu Wilson to bring her A game. Like, seriously, like we had one squib. She did most of her stunts. She has to roll in the right way. Nailed it. Like, it's unbelievable.
And it was very important to us to do everything we could to do practical.
Yeah.
And if we needed VFX to touch things up or add some spray that didn't land or whatever, we would do it. But like, we approached this with practical in mind.
But then when we did have VFX, we had like the best VFX. He did Terrifier 2, Josh
Petrino.
Yeah. So we're very lucky across the board with our crew.
A lot of passion.
Yeah.
I can certainly feel it in the effects. And especially the scene you talk about, Twig's death. I mean, it is quite the brutal one. And I love to see it. For my final couple of questions, they are a bit spoilery. So, I mean, this is obviously going to come out around the time of the release, so we'll save them. But I love who shows up at the end. We don't have to say who she plays, but Kate Siegel. I mean, you've worked with her before on Hypnotic and as a Mike Flanagan fanatic. I mean, it's always great seeing her on the screen.
Yeah.
Midnight Mass. I got more over that way as well. So because you had worked with her before, when you were writing this, did you have her in mind for that role right away, or was that a luck of the draw?
Yeah, it's why it's Kate Montana. It's the I just said what role she said, but there's like 8 roles in this.
No, you didn't say like.
Oh, right. Yeah.
We called her. when we pitched the idea to the team and we were like, this is where we want to end this film and this is why, and this is where we're headed in this dreamscape. We think we want to see if, Kate will come to play. And we picked up the phone and called her and she said, whatever you want, whatever you need, I'm there. Just tell me where to be and when to be there.
And it was a pickup day. We were shooting in Valencia.
It ended up being a pickup day.
We were shooting in Valencia. She was the first one. There was like 4 of us. She was like the first one there, did her own hair and makeup. Like you can't beat Kate Siegel.
Yeah, it was great. It was fun to be on another set with her.
Yeah. Because of Hypnotic, she's one of our closest friends.
And how we shot that scene with just this tiny splinter crew that had nothing to do with like the New Jersey leg really, other than Julia Swain, our incredible DP. I just love how that scene turned out. It was everything we wanted it to be. It was everything we imagined. And it's just such a fun button.
Yeah.
It is, and it sets up something that could be very exciting in the future. And when I talked to Lulu, she had said, there was hopeful talks, but I'm curious, from you two, what the future is looking like on a possible Becky 3.
We officially said at a Collider screening that yes, Becky
will be back. Only because the producers were in the audience and we were like, what are we? Just tell us what to do, man. And they were like, okay, fuck it, just say yes.
Yeah,
and we're like, okay, it's on you guys.
As far as we know, Becky will return, and everything we did throughout the second film was very intentional
for a third one,
for where we wanted to take the story and take Becky's character and continue an evolution, right? Like good sequels build upon their predecessor. We wanted to do that with Wrath of Becky, and our vision for the third one ideally builds upon Wrath of Becky. And continues to evolve in terms of cinematography, design,
kills,
location, kills, like all of that. So we have a lot of fun ideas, but there are some very specific hints in the Wrath of Becky that tell you where things are headed if you are
paying attention.
Well, I definitely look forward to going back then and making sure I caught all of those hints. I know I got a few of them, but I do look forward to getting to do a double feature. I mean, I told Lulu and Sean yesterday I was ready to watch this as soon as it was done again, because it's that much fun. So
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
And I appreciate you both taking the time to chat with me. I can feel the passion from you both in filmmaking, and I love to see it. So I look forward to spreading the word about this and hopefully chatting for Becky 3 when it comes along.
Yes. Please. Thank you, Grant.